wait till you hear about the United States, because wow. And not like a long time ago, like today.
This is an investigation done by Truth Out and others, showing that prisoners across the U.S., especially in certain areas of the U.S., in the summer heat, in these unair-conditioned prisons, are living in like fucking hot pans. I mean, they're basically boiling in their cells. Yeah. And of course, nobody in the U.S. cares about our prison state and our prison population that we abuse in so many ways. And this is just a new way of making sure the U.S. prison state, the largest in the world, is a horror show.
And so it's not uncommon for people to die in prison, unfortunately, because of the horrific inability to access any kind of medical care and the disgusting conditions in which people live. But we don't often talk about or hear about the death due to extreme temperatures. But as you may have noticed or read about, these summers continue to get hotter. I'm not really sure why, but
it's just I think it's a coincidence.
You know,
maybe.
Climate just changes.
Climate just changes. Amen to that, sister. It just does. It just does. Sure, over the rest of the history of the world, several billion years, it changed over the span of hundreds of thousands to a million years. And right now, it happened to be changing over 10 years. It's just a thing that happens.
Well, wasn't it you that was commenting on how America just does it faster, harder, and better? So before, yes, the climate changed over hundreds of thousands of years, but because America,
mm-hmm.
we're
doing it better.
Yeah,
I hear that.
So, in line with that thinking, this past June alone, 32 people died in Texas state prisons. That's one state, 32 people in 1 month. During the last week of June, that's this June, 3 people, including one woman who was, I mean, she didn't have perfect health, but she wasn't close to death. A 37-year-old died in her prison after having complained about the conditions. And by the way, let's just look at why she was in prison real quick. She was sentenced to 4 years for not meeting the requirements of her 10-year probation sentence for a fight with an ex-girlfriend.
Jesus Christ.
Which became a death sentence. So we are actually sentencing people to death for probation violations. And you might think that sounds like an extreme interpretation of this, but this is the reality of life in prisons where where temperatures go well beyond 100 degrees. And then you are stuck inside these tiny cells that have no airflow and also lack of access to water. People have complained of lack of access to water. For instance, a 35-year-old, Tommy McCullough, died while mowing the grass at the Thomas Gorey unit in Huntsville. And his family told a news outlet that he had been complaining about excessive heat and insufficient access to water all week.
And here's the thing: is like they love to say that, like, well, we don't abuse them, we don't torture them, we just keep them in prison. How is it not torture to put someone in literally a heating room until they die? To me, that sounds like, that probably fits under cruel and unusual punishment, I would say.
Yeah, which is supposedly not allowed, but the United States is cruel and unusual as an entity. This, I mean, and this is not specific to Texas. This is all across particularly the South, of course, where temperatures are the most egregious. But for instance, this article also outlines a correctional center, which I hate that fucking term, on the banks of the Mississippi River, and that now incarcerates nearly 2,200 men, and that has no effective cooling system, because why would you?
And I just want to remind everyone, because I know there is a tendency, some of it is even subconscious, for us to go, well, yeah, I don't like that, but they're prisoners, so they shouldn't have done the wrong thing that got them there. If you didn't want to do the time, don't do the crime, or whatever the fuck they say. Let's remember what our prisons are filled with. First of all, you have the number of thousands of people that are fully innocent, meaning they literally never did the thing they've been accused of. Then you have the thousands that are in there for small drug crimes where the drug war should not even exist. It is a war against our own people. And a drug issue should be a health issue, not a crime issue. So you have those hundreds of thousands of people locked up in these heating cells. Then you have people that were just pushed into doing something like stealing something because of economic force, because of terrible life circumstances that pushed them to that. Then you have people who were just abused by police, and the police accused them of assaulting a police officer because they didn't want to be arrested for loitering or some crazy shit like that. The amount of people in our prisons that should not be in our prisons, in the largest prison state in the fucking world, is probably over 1 million, considering we have over 2 million in the prisons at any time. It's probably over 1 million that 100% should not even be anywhere near a prison, yet they're there and they're being tortured. So when you think to yourself and you have that unconscious, subconscious thought about, well, I don't care that much because they are criminals, just remember that most of these people are not criminals by any stretch of the definition. And then, of course, you have some that, they got in a fight and they beat a guy up and it sucks. But does that mean they should spend the next 20 years of their life in a prison? We are insane with these draconian laws. And then now we're also heating people to death.
Well, and even if somebody did a violent crime, the question is, what kind of society do we want to build? Do we want to build the kind of society where people are tortured because they are violent or because they engage in criminal activity, even when it is harmful to another person? Or do we want to have the kind of society where we try to rehabilitate people, we try to get to the root cause of that violent behavior, and then we try to treat them and to get them to be better themselves so that they can be better in society? And then if and when that fails, then we should have some kind of alternative where it's like, okay, well, it's not safe to have you among the larger society, but what the fuck kind of human being are you if you're like, you know what, you did something that I find vile, therefore I will torture you? Like, do you remember when you were in school and you learned about like Hammurabi, eye for an eye type shit, and the teacher inevitably goes, and that's just not civilized, or something to that effect? Well, guess what? We take people who violate probation and we burn them alive. So it's not even eye for an eye. It's an eye for a stubbed toe.
Yeah.
Like it's torture for doing something that should amount to oh, that wasn't great. But
yeah.
There's also, again, as I mentioned, the issue of access to water. And there's, for instance, there's one place or several places actually, that in Illinois prisons, where Legionella, the bacteria that causes the severe lung infection Legionnaire's disease, was found in the water. So it's ridiculously hot and you try to slake your thirst by drinking water, and then you get fucking Legionnaire's disease. That's lovely. And then compounding these issues, for instance, there's a commissary, which is the store, like the prison store, where you can buy water.
With all the money you're making in prison.
With what money? And this one prisoner points out that he could buy up to 24 16-ounce bottles every 2 weeks. That's not enough to stay hydrated, particularly in extreme heat. But prisoners who don't have access to money, he says that during the prison's first shift, staff distribute drinking water from bags. That's the only way that people without money can access drinking water. Now, I don't really know what bags these are, but that doesn't sound terribly sanitary.
No, I wouldn't think these are pristine, wonderful bags that they're handing around.
But again, I mean, and if y'all want to read this article, there's more information up on Truthout, but it is, well, you have another one that's in the same vein.
Yeah, here's another article that Truthout did, and I'm glad they're I'm glad they're sticking with this topic, but officials have been known to literally blow hot air on inmates who complain about the heat. Aging heat sensitive prisons at this prison in Texas scored an unprecedented victory after a district judge issued a ruling saying the department was deliberately indifferent in forcing officials to relocate medically vulnerable prisoners. In their litigation, the prisoners cited 23 heat-related deaths that have occurred at department-run prisons since 1998, 11 of those deaths occurring during a notorious heat wave in 2011. So it's been going on a while, but there's some of these prisons, when people would complain about the heat, they would then blow more hot air on them to stop people from complaining about the heat, because that's clearly the answer. You know, in a just and moral world, if someone complains about being too hot, you then pump more hot air into their cell, and that generally solves the problem. I mean, at least they're problem solving. You can say that for them.
Well, and I just, the phrase torture farm came to mind. Like, we don't just do it with livestock, we do it with humans. We torture them. And again, compounding torture, the extreme heat compounded with the lack of access to potable water, compounded with, just a prison staff torturing people. And this article also makes the point that the access to sanitation, whether that be things for a woman's period or sanitation that people need for medical conditions, it doesn't exist. And then of course it just makes it all that much worse when it's hot and you don't have access to water. And this is, I mean, it shouldn't be that surprising in a nation that was founded on genocide and slavery, but I find it laughable in the in the sad sense, not the ha 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 lighthearted sense, that people oftentimes point to, like Nazi Germany and other dictatorships and authoritarian governments for being so cruel to the population. I'm like, wait till you hear about the United States, because wow. And not like a long time ago, like today.
Land of the free has the largest prison population in the world. How do you figure that?